Hello and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you my second attempt at painting a Tomb King's warrior. So Games Workshop kindly sent me the starter set for the Tomb Kings for Warhammer the Old World, and I've decided I really like the models and I want to paint a whole bunch of them, so I'm trying to come up with a color scheme that I really like and that I could see myself doing an entire army of at some point. So my last attempt was at painting a skeleton warrior was a more sort of classical desert theme. So for this one I decided I wanted something completely different, and so I thought, why not go with, well, a blue skeleton. So I'm painting here on top of the Wraithbone primer, and the paint I'm using is one of the Speedpaints from the Army Painter, and this one is called Raging Sea. Then I decided I didn't want the skeleton to be just plain old blue. I really wanted it to look like some sort of oxidized bronze. And since bronze also often have, when it's oxidized, a really nice, almost mint green tone to it, I wanted to give a little bit of that shade to the skeleton first. And so I mixed up a little bit of blue and green paint, and these are Oxide Green and Phthalo Blue from Kimera Kolors, and I used that as a layer of dry brushing. Then I used some bronze paint from Huge Miniatures as the last layer of dry brushing. And this method of sort of illustrating oxidized bronze is one I picked up from El Miniaturista on Instagram, and I think it's a really good idea that you start out with the base blue color and then you dry brush the middle colors on top, because most of the oxidization will be happening sort of in the crevices almost. So I think it just really captures that look really well. Then I decided for some of the details I wanted them to be blue, and for that I used Talazar Blue, one of the contrast paints from Citadel. I really debated with myself whether or not I should go with blue or if I should perhaps go with something that would contrast much more with the other colors, like for instance a warmer tone like red or orange, but I decided I wanted to go almost monochrome with this. So you can also see the spear and the helmet has been painted an almost gray color. This is actually burnt moss, so it has a greenish tint to it, which I think works really well with the bronze look. Then, as you can see here for the shield, I am doing once again my cross-hatching as I often do. And for the first layer, I am using a contrast paint from Citadel, and this one is called Cheodon Turquoise, so it's a really nice dark turquoise color. I thought that using pure black would actually be almost too stark, so that's why I went with the turquoise color. I also used the same color, as you can see here, to add just a little bit of definition to the tip of the spear that I also decided that I wanted to be blue. I could, of course, just have painted it in a metallic color, which would have been perhaps the more obvious solution. But yeah, I thought that blue would be a little bit more magical and more fun. And while I really liked the blue rim on the helmet, I didn't really care much for the earpiece or the nose guard being the exact same color. I thought that looked just a little bit weird. So I decided to paint them gold, both because I thought it would make sense that they were made out of metal, but also because I thought that would just add a little bit of warmth and contrast and a little bit of visual interest to the piece. Then for highlighting the shield, I am using two different gray colors. The first one that you can see I'm working with here is called Steel Gray, and it's from Vallejo, and the second one is also from Vallejo, and it's called Glacier Blue. So I'm using first the Steel Gray on its own, then a mixture of the two, and then the Glacier Blue on its own as the final layer of highlights. I've been asked how to achieve the necessary brush control to make these thin diagonal lines. And my best advice is to find a color consistency that really works for you, and then just practice short, quick movements with as little hesitation as possible and without pressing down with the brush, because as soon as you press down with the brush just a little bit, the line will thicken and it will not look quite as good. I still make a ton of mistakes while doing this, but my overall philosophy with painting stuff like this is the magic is in the number. So the more lines you have, the better it usually looks. And if some of them are a little bit too thick or not quite straight, it probably won't really be anything you will notice once you look at the final model. This is definitely something that I'm painting sort of a tabletop quality. It's not for a display or anything. And I would also advise you to make sure that if you paint something for a tabletop, have fun with it and don't be overly concerned about getting every single little thing right, because then you might just get bogged down with the sort of feeling that you need to get everything perfect and you'll never get a painted army on the tabletop. That's just my 2 cents though. Then for the rim of the shield, I highlight it with a bit of light blue. I use Blaster Blue, which is a fluorescent paint from Huge Miniatures. It's just a nice light blue that I like using, so it's not because it's fluorescent I'm using it here. I mixed it up with just a little bit of white because it's just slightly too dark on its own to tell on top of Talazar Blue. This is a combination I've used many times, so I know that I have to just mix in a little bit of white to make it really pop. As you can tell, I'm sort of doing an edge highlight, and then I'm adding some lines in between the tiny dots on the rim of the shield, again to add the illusion of light hitting the shield from above. Again, this could be done with much more time and patience, and you could make all these lines much more smooth, and the transitions from the darker blue to the lighter blue very fine. But for a tabletop, I think this is completely acceptable and just fine. As you can see, I'm using progressively lighter layers of blue, and the last one it's not completely white, but almost. In keeping with the sort of almost not quite monochrome look I'm going for, I decided also to make a bluish base, and here I'm using 2 contrast paints. These are Athematic Blue and Achillean Green, also from Citadel, and I'm just doing a really quick wet blend here. As you can see, it's very quick and easy to do. You just need to work relatively fast before the paint settles too much. Once that was dry, I just quickly dry brushed it with a bit of white. I had actually thought about putting the model on a more desert-themed base, because I usually, find myself imagining the Tomb Kings being placed in a desert after all. They are based on ancient Egypt. But I thought I wanted to do something completely different and something more, I don't know if it's more fun, but something that was new and something I haven't really seen much before. And so I went for snow and ice. So after I had put the model on the base, I of course used a little bit of snow powder. This is from Green Stuff World. I put a little watered down PVA on the base, and then just some snow powder. Again, snow powder is not to everyone's liking, and it doesn't perhaps give you like perfect results. But again, this is for a tabletop, and I'm completely happy with it. Lastly, I added a bit of liquid frost, also from Green Stuff World. I think it's some sort of saline solution, and so when it dries, it forms teeny tiny salt crystals, and they take a little bit of time to form, so you need a little bit of patience for this, and you also need to go over it more than once. I think I went over it about 4 or 5 times until I was finally happy with the sort of size and shape of the crystals. So here is the finished result. It's a sort of oxidized, aged, snow frost, Egyptian-esque skeleton warrior. I'm not quite sure it fits the overall theme of the Tomb Kings at all, but I actually quite like it, and I definitely had fun painting it. It's something a little bit different from what I usually paint. If you'll notice, there is absolutely not even a tiny spot of pink on this model, and it hurt me just a little bit, and I really wanted to do something, but I decided not to. You need sometimes to practice just a little bit of self-restraint after all. Just a quick side note on the salt crystals. As I said, you need to go over it about 4 or 5 times before they will actually really start to take shape. And they are quite fragile. You could toughen them up with a bit of super glue if you want, but if you're going to be transporting your models to and from a lot of games and they are going to be treated a little bit rough, the crystals will fall off. They're very easy to replace though, so it's not me saying you shouldn't put this on a gaming piece, it's just something that is perhaps worth keeping in mind. So that was what I wanted to show you today, but before you leave, I would as always like to take the opportunity to thank the wonderful people who support Dice and Demons over on Patreon. So thank you so much to Thomas Madsen, Scott Broadway, Gwenna L, Queen's Wolf, Double J's Terrain, Mola Mola, Cyber Fossil, Steve Iberly, Bossworthy Rogue, Mando Project, Starcon85, S. Beer, Ichinocacus, and Elliot Philby. I will leave a link to my Patreon page in the show notes if you are also interested in perhaps becoming a Patreon. I would of course also really love to know what you think about my snow-themed Tomb King's Warrior and if you have any suggestions for future painting projects. So please let me know in the comments below. I of course always appreciate it if you leave a like, if you subscribe to my channel, and if you feel like sharing my videos with your friends. It all helps. Also remember that you can follow me as Dice and Demons over on X, formerly known as Twitter, and on Instagram, where you can stay up to date on my painting projects. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!